Welcome to the Music Maker's Cookbook, the podcast that helps independent artists cook up recipes for success in the music industry. I'm Sean.
I'm Brandon.
And today's question at the start of every episode that we do, Brandon has one that he wants to ask. Usually I throw them out, but we're switching up a little bit today.
Thinking about this the other day while I was cleaning the bathroom of all places. Don't know why.
Because the kitchen made it on theme. But
Right.
Thank you for your honesty.
Yeah, of course. Bathroom was looking great, by the way.
I'm glad I now know that.
I'm not sure why I said that. But, Sean, if you only had the choice of one while you're mixing, okay? Or just working out audio in general, right? Would you choose to use EQ or compression? You can't use both.
I can't use both. Either just EQ or just compression.
Either one.
Okay. So here's the thing. Do multi-band compressors fall under compression?
See, I knew you were going to ask that.
I knew you
were going to get around it somehow.
There are so many caveats that I've thought of.
Yeah.
First of all, because like the main thing, originally I was going to say EQ because I would want to clean up the sound, so that way I can just kind of get the best mix and then go from there. But if the preamps that I'm using have potential high pass filters on them, then I won't have to worry about that.
Right.
I can still keep the low and clean without having to worry about EQ. I just got to track it right going in.
Totally.
If there's multi-band compressors, then I can do some basic EQs. I can make certain parts of a signal jump out more than others. If I can do dynamic EQs, then I can tame certain transients or things like that.
I knew you were gonna bring that up.
They're very. I guess honestly, at the end of the day, it depends on the performance that I'm getting.
Yeah.
If I'm working with an artist who has an uneven, unpracticed performance, that has a lot of dynamicness to it, but unintentional dynamicness to it, then I'd probably say compressors. Yeah. Because I can cut off the lows, tidy it up, emphasize what I need to, but the end goal is to make it tight and get it, tonally where it needs to go, dynamically where it needs to go, and then go from there. Whereas if I'm with like a really tight, well-practiced performer, where it's consistent, like I don't have to worry about one snare being wildly louder or the kicks or anything like that. Then I might stick with EQ because it allows me to, once again, with dynamic EQs or whatnot, I can sidechain things like that. I can boost certain frequencies to emphasize certain things if maybe I'm not happy with the exact mic choice or stuff like that. Yeah. Plus, EQs have phase flips.
Right.
A lot of compressors really don't.
Yeah, that's true.
But also I would probably have that on the preamp. So I think both I could do a pretty good job with, only doing one or the other. I don't know exactly which way I'd go. Actually, final thing I want to say, I would probably compressors. Now that I've talked all this through out loud, I'm gonna say compressors. Okay. Because as you mentioned, there is the high pass on the preamp. I have multi-band compression, but also compressors. That is where you get a lot of that funk, that tonal flavor, that color. Totally. Be it a FET, an opto, a tube, or all that. Yep. EQs are usually not trying to embark a lot of flavor onto them. It's true. So I can get a clean compressor. I can't, and you can get colored EQs and dirty EQs.
Oh, for sure. I mean, Pultec, right.
Exactly. Yeah. But man, you can really do it with a lot of compressors. Yeah. Especially if like the 1176 has the in and out, you can overdrive
especially
it,
the
smash
1176,
it.
Right.
Yeah. And then if you want to do like parallel compression to fill it out, you can't really do that with an EQ. Right. So I'm gonna say compressors for me.
So I was gonna take a very similar approach to that. I think you nailed every single thing that I kind of thought about too, was like you have the compressors that can also shape things tonally, right? Especially when you're using, like an 1176 or something like that, you get that extra saturation in there, especially depending on what kind of 1176 you use in general. Like, so like you even have different options there, right? Yeah. And then on top of that, like it's like a lot of it's about trying to capture it up front. Right. Like EQ there is a lot of the time to help us get to somewhere that we couldn't capture in the forefront. But if we had the mic choices or something, if we had the room, if we had the right instrument, if we had the right player, right? A lot of things kind of add up. And I feel like we can change those within reason, maybe not the player necessarily, but I can pull out the C414 or I could pull out my Audio-Technica AT3035, and then be like, oh, which one's better? Which one gets us close to the result, right? Oh, yeah. And that kind of helps almost not completely eliminate EQ because, like, obviously we'd probably want to touch it up. But
I would
you could get there most...
argue with that.
Go ahead.
Well, like microphones are basically
No, they
EQs.
are. They are. Yeah, yeah.
So I think
No,
if
exactly.
you do enough, if you have enough time to do some
That's what I'm
planning,
saying. Yep.
yeah, you
Yep.
can totally get there
That's what
without
I'm saying.
EQ.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
of course, there might be some things in there to clean up.
Maybe.
But
if we don't do our job
if we
right.
don't do our job right? So,
But we're good,
like,
Brandon. We don't need EQ.
Exactly, because if we do it right up front, there's less need for EQ. Right?
I know how to use a proximity effect. Don't add
That's
me.
right. Yes. Fucking right up on the microphone.
If I want a full, I'll put that ribbon mic right up there.
Right up
Just
there.
shove it right up there, and
there.
it'll sound so full.
Yeah, and I'm like honestly controlling the dynamics and everything, like you were kind of saying too. I think I'd be more of a compressor guy at the end of the day. Especially with how many types of compressors are out there. I mean, you can get some really funky kind of stuff going, and like compression is it makes a massive difference. It like really seriously. I mean, could you imagine doing manual fucking fader rides on every single millisecond of audio, to try to control dynamics like obviously we do fader rides at the end, right? Maybe along the way, maybe some clip gain, of course. But our fader rides aren't anything nuts. Could you imagine the fader rides you'd have to do to control some dynamics if you had an unrehearsed performer, right? That was very spiky, and that would just be, oh my God.
The saver for that,
kind of a nightmare.
The saver for that is clip gain, like you mentioned.
Exactly.
And also is like the vocal rider or bass rider or like those automatic fader plugins.
Yep.
That'd be the only way to do it. Doing
100%.
it manually.
Oh man.
You would have to. It would cost so many man hours in the studio.
It would, because you'd probably actually end up resorting to clicking, honestly, because it might just be easier that way.
I would just get a really nice sounding analog pre, and I would just, or I'd go to tape, and I would just saturate everything into it. And I would I'm going to compress it by overdrive.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can do that. That's totally valid too, right?
Like, you want to sound like Aretha Franklin? No, I want it really clean. No, you want to sound like Aretha Franklin. We're flattening this.
That's right. That's right. No, that was just the question I thought of when I was cleaning the bathroom. So
no, that's a good question. That was a fun conversation.
That's an interesting question, right? Because like we often think a lot of the times you have EQ and compression. I mean, those are your two mains. You know, that's like your fucking hammer and saw, right? If you're doing woodworking, right? Like so, they go hand in hand at most points. And what if we didn't have one? What if you didn't have your left hand, right? So. It's kind of interesting to think about.
No, it's a really good question.
Thought you get a kick out of that one.
I did get a kick out of it. It got me thinking a lot of like, well, what exactly do they all do, and how can I do what this would do with this other tool, and
how to substitute it, or alternative. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I never really I've always known it, but not something that's talked about, that everything you put audio through has its own EQ curve.
Yeah.
The microphone has its own EQ curve, the distance from it and how it's recorded. But then compressors, they don't just pass through all the frequencies. And they have an EQ curve.
Oh, 100%.
They'll saturate certain things and make your sound sound differently. So if I have enough compressors, I could get any EQ sound that I want.
Totally.
Not every EQ sound that exists, but every EQ sound that I want.
Right.
There's a big difference.
That's it. That's right.
Yep.
Yeah. Fun.
Yeah.
Love audio stuff.
So that was a good question. I appreciate you bringing that up.
Of course.
If you do your own mixing and mastering or whatnot, let us know which option you would pick. Otherwise, moving on to the main topic.
Kind of leads to the main topic a little bit.
Does it?
A little bit.
Please make that transition, because I could not think of one.
Because we rely on computers for 90% of audio work these days,
Yes,
I would
we do.
say.
Smart rocks.
And if you're doing mixing and mastering and things like that, and you're using a fancy EQ plugin on every single one of your channels, well, then you need CPU power to do that. And I probably don't recommend you doing that. You probably don't need EQ on everything, but I mean, we can get there. I mean, that's more of a philosophical, in the moment kind of thing, right? So what I'm really trying to say is that we're trying to free up CPU power for you to have the ability to use more EQs and more compressor plugins. Sean's a hardware guy, so we'll talk about that later. Because that helps free CPU power. That's for damn sure.
Does. This whole episode is about optimization.
Optimizing your PC.
Yep.
And your Mac or whatever you're using. So very important in audio production. Very important.
Oh yeah. Especially if you're just jumping into it.
Exactly. And it's taken a lot of years to kind of refine my personal setup and how things function well without getting hung up on it. Because I remember back in the day, this was like 2009, 2010 era. I was still on my old Mac back there. You can't see it on the camera, but it's over there, and
It looks so
it's
cute.
right. And it's a lifeline to our boards because it has Pro Tools 10 on it. So we need to keep it.
It needs to stick around.
It has to stick around.
Put it in a shrine or something.
Right?
Yeah.
Have 2 lights pointing up at it. You know.
Do you have any extra ones? You got a lot of lights.
I could probably find some.
There you go. Oh, we can use the Where's your tiny lamp?
Which
one?
one?
That has like the cylinder with the lights. It's like the mini version of what I bought from you.
Oh, down there.
Yeah, you could totally put that on.
Yeah, dude.
There we go.
Dude. That'd be awesome. And back in the day, I would run into so many issues when I'm recording myself with whether it's like a fragmented drive where you have files all over the fucking place and it can't find anything, or it's pulling from different locations and slowing down the read-write speeds, right? Or it's just clocking out everything because I'm using so many different things on it, or have too many tracks, going on it, and it's clocking out the RAM, right? And I can't function properly. If you're experiencing something like this, and it's really easy to do because being organized on your computer is kind of an art at the end of the day, right? It takes a lot of discipline and just a lot of pre-planning, ahead to get this right and to get things functioning properly. So if you want to be able to be like come downstairs or go upstairs wherever your studio is, turn it on and then go, you have to do these things to get it right, because if not, you're going to try to go and then you're not going to be able to go and you're going to get pissed off and then you're going to lose whatever you're doing along the way. So
For sure.
We thought this one was super important.
It is. Fortunately, it's less of a problem nowadays than it was back, as you mentioned, 2009.
Yeah.
With the speeds of writing from external disks or just internal, like how many cores in your processor, like all like technical things behind computers, the read-write speeds, all that stuff. It is a lot better than it was, but it can still be an issue because since now that there is more power to pull from, some of these plugins, some of these things that you do, if you're really just throwing everything at the wall creatively, it can still be easy to just kind of overload and get things going.
Yeah. And then I want to say too, on top of that, flip side of the coin, it's also easy to take it overboard too.
Yeah.
And now you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars on things that you might not necessarily even need, because video editing and audio editing, way different beasts. So like if you're going to be doing more video stuff, obviously you have to take that step and get the nicest kind of stuff out there. Great graphics card, great CPU, lots of RAM, right? Where with audio, you don't need to do that as much, but you're going to be marketed to that way too. So then it makes you feel like you're getting some FOMO by missing, hey, I have 32 gigs of RAM versus I need 64, right? Or, and like, do you really need that 64? Like, maybe not for audio, but that's kind of like where we're going to try to dispel a little bit today.
And that is something kind of like, since you brought it up, just a quick hack. If you are building your own PC specifically for audio, you don't need a crazy graphics card.
Right.
My PC is a custom built one. It literally has a 640 in it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of old.
That is a very old, not powerful,
but it works out well.
Graphics card. But it works out well. I don't need it. Fuck, they're on like 4080s and shit like that now.
Oh, I mean, the 4080s are crazy. Oh my God.
Don't need it. Nope. I'm not rendering Blender animations. I'm not doing cloth sims or particle acceleration. Right. So just you can save a lot of money on a used video card.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And then this also kind of speaks to the Mac PC thing too. Like, do you need to go out and buy an Apple computer? Because that's been marketed towards the creative too. Well, I guess we'll just kind of get into that. Maybe do you want to start there?
Start with Mac versus PC?
Let's do it. You want to get it out of the way?
Cool. You want me to start off with it? I got strong opinions. You ready?
I'm ready. I want to hear what you're going to say. Because I know something that you might not know.
You probably something I don't know.
No, not you. Them.
I know, but probably me too.
Okay,
because my opinion is it doesn't fucking matter.
That was way better. I thought we were about to get into an argument.
No,
because honestly, it does not matter.
It does not fucking matter. Especially with a lot of the programs nowadays. As long as the drives are formatted properly, sessions are compatible. I can open up Brandon's session that he does on his Mac on my PC at home and vice versa. All the stuff is, the plugins, if you have the same thing, the licenses, they transfer over. You can work on different platforms, not as specific as it once was, unless maybe they use Logic or GarageBand. Those are Mac platform specific.
It's the only thing.
But it's the only thing. It's the only one. And at the end of the day, they both have, if you're using interface, their graphic card, the audio cards don't matter. You're using external audio card. If it's built properly, the specs are the specs. You can run a session, you can have it as much bitrate as you want. And it doesn't matter at this point. That's my opinion.
No, I totally agree with you. There's only very specific circumstances that
Mm-hmm.
I think it does make a difference. Number one, if you want more flexibility, you get a Windows because you can do more with it. There's more available. Number two, if you want an ecosystem, you get an Apple.
Correct.
Right? So you buy into Apple's ecosystem. I am an Apple slut. I have a fucking Apple Watch, iPhone, Mac, AirPods that I put in the washer so I don't use them anymore. I have all these things built out that communicate with each other, which is super helpful because with when I'm working with clients, they're oftentimes than not on iPhone, not all the time, but I'm able to just send stuff right away. I mean, the collaboration is insane.
That was a point that I was going to bring up, though.
Yeah.
That is a subtle difference. Like, they both are the exact same in terms of the functionality of them.
Yes.
But the client experience and transferring, man, that AirDrop is
dude,
way more
whoever
efficient.
came up with AirDrop, that's a dap for you, bro.
There it goes.
Because that's a damn good fucking invention. And also the password sharing too for the Wi-Fi. Who was in the boardroom when they came up with that? Because high fives all around, bro.
Someone channeled their inner Steve Jobs and actually made
Straight
some
up.
innovation for
Straight
once
up.
at Apple.
Yeah, because within the last 10 years, there hasn't really been all that much, to be honest.
No.
So rest in peace, Steve Jobs. Great innovator.
I'm an innovator, baby. Change the world. Do you know that reference?
I don't.
Oh, it's Epic Rap Battles of History.
Which one?
Steve Jobs versus
I've seen that before.
versus,
It's been Bill Gates.
Bill Gates, yeah, that's the
I've
one.
seen that one before, so it's been
and
a
then
while.
Hal. What is it? What's the one from Space Odyssey? Hal 2800 or something, or Hal 4000? I don't know.
I'm not sure.
But yeah, then the robot comes in at the end and the overlords take over. No, that was an old reference.
That's great. Epic Rap Battles of History is awesome. Do they still make those?
No, I have no idea.
Sidetracked. I'm
They
sorry.
like put out a couple and they'll go for like a year or two without making any updates.
Okay.
And they'll put out a couple. It's not as consistent as it once was.
Gotcha. Great stuff. Great content. That was peak YouTube, honestly.
Yeah. Actually, I remember that line from it where they're like, I bet this beat was made from an Apple. Nope, Fruity Loops, PC.
So that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up because the last circumstance that would kind of tailor Mac versus PC is what you already brought up. Software dependencies, right? So FL is fortunately enough to be on Mac and PC nowadays. Logic and GarageBand are not, because guess what? They're developed by Apple. Why would they want to put them on Windows? I mean, that only makes sense, right? Kind of. I mean,
Exclusivity.
I'm sure there's a business strategy there somewhere.
Exclusivity.
Yeah. But like you think they might make more money though the other way too.
I don't care.
At this point. They don't care. They're fucking Apple.
Apple's a fucking $1 trillion company.
You're right.
Can let's take a second real quick.
I wish I
any of
had.
us actually physically think of how much $1 trillion is?
No.
And I think they're like at 3.8 or
Yeah,
something
it's
at
nuts.
this point. Like, it's just mind blowing just how much that actually means.
Actually crazy.
Yeah. So
Actually
they don't
crazy.
care if
No,
Logic is
you're
only
right. You're
on
right.
Mac.
They don't care if it's scarce. Who gives a fuck? Right.
That's why you buy them.
That's true. And an
Anyways.
iPhone.
Yeah, there are specific apps that are only
like
on one or the other.
Sonar, Cakewalk Sonar is a Windows only, right?
Yep.
So I had to recently do a project that I had to run a virtual machine and use Windows on my Mac. So therefore, it doesn't really matter what you're using. It really doesn't. It's just the exclusivity that Sean was kind of talking about.
But even then, as you mentioned, ran a virtual machine, you got it on your Mac,
That's
and then you
another
can
thing, right?
build a Hackintosh. You can get the OS on whatever you need it to go on if you're
Sean.
tech savvy enough.
That's illegal.
Is it?
I think it's against their user agreement. But that's
okay.
about it.
That's okay.
It's illegal.
That just means I can't sue them if I was going to make a Disney reference with how they said you can't sue us if you die at a
Don't make
restaurant.
a Disney reference. I don't want to get sued. I don't want it.
But man, I love how the
Nothing but
happiest,
great things about Disney.
yeah, the happiest place in the world has no shadiness. Anyways, but yeah, optimizing your computer setup. That you said the big choice is PC and Mac. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter in terms of functionality. It's just who are the people you're going to be working with, what ecosystem are you already in, and how far in the weeds do you want to go. If you want it to be organized and work and be able to interact with most people or a lot of people that come into where you are, Macs are great.
Yeah.
If you want to go in the weeds, if you want to save a lot of money, build it yourself, figure out how to route things and get things going and upgrade moving forward, you can't crack open that computer back there and upgrade it.
Right.
You can't do it.
Yep.
I can upgrade my computer till Kingdom Come.
Exactly.
So that's another perk of it. But at the end of the day, they'll both be fine, whatever choice they're making.
Totally agree. I'm glad we got that one out of the way because I know a
Yes.
lot of people still get caught up on that conversation. That's like top of the funnel, right? Mac or PC. That's the first question I see a lot of time on forums. It doesn't really matter unless you're bound to a specific software that you want to use. It really just doesn't matter these days. Obviously, like you said, there's benefits and drawbacks to both, upgrading and things like that, which, by the way, Sean, I have to say it since we're talking about it right now.
Say it.
Sean is now in the Apple ecosystem.
Partially.
You want to tell everybody what you just got?
Oh, I just got an old MacBook Pro from 2013.
Hell yeah.
That's gotten some things to update.
Mac Pro.
Mac Pro. I said MacBook, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I'm so far out of the ecosystem.
You got the trash can.
I got the trash can. Just so I have the options there to convert from Logic or GarageBand if I need to, or to easily get AirDrop files.
Yep.
If they come to the session or whatnot. But I'm not going to run anything
I don't blame you.
major off of it because it's just so far out of my setup. But it's nice.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I thought it was a good pickup. I had to let everybody know.
For the price?
Yeah.
Hell yeah, it was.
Dude.
Getting into the Mac ecosystem for only $350.
Yep.
That can run most modern programs. Like it can. I put a session in Pro Tools on it that had 60 tracks, and I put a convolution reverb plugin on every single one of them.
Wow.
And it did a pretty good job.
That's awesome.
Which, once again, going to optimizing,
Yes.
some plugins take a lot more data than other plugins
Yes,
do.
they do. Yes, they
They're
do.
not all built equal.
No, they're not. No, they're not. And
Equalizer.
I see what you did there. I see what you did there.
All right.
Some companies are way better at doing this than others. It just kind of depends on the company and depends on the type of plugin that you're using, right?
And if you're oversampling.
Well, that was going to be another thing. Is oversampling is obviously a huge one here.
Yeah.
But you still have some plugin companies like UAD or UA Universal Audio that still rely on some kind of external powering for plugins that they don't have on their native systems, right? So when I say native, it means on the computer itself. They're running it natively. DSP means you're relying on something else powering the plugin. In this case, it might be the Apollo, right? The Apollos have specific Shark processors on board that run the plugins for UAD. And then that means that it frees up computer space, but at the expense of latency. On top of that, right? So whether you're tracking or mixing, this is where it really kind of comes into play. So you got to know what plugins react and how, and what latency is, and how it's measured, and how you can kind of get around it too.
How you can combat and whatnot.
Exactly.
Latency is such a weird thing. I told you about the problem I have with latency with my interface.
No,
right?
I don't think so.
No? Well, when I use a lot of hardware, and usually when you take audio, run it out of your interface through hardware, back into your interface, and then back into Pro Tools, there's latency, which means the audio that comes back is delayed behind the audio that left.
Yep. It's by a certain amount of samples.
Yeah. But you can go into Pro Tools, you can measure it, and you can say, okay, auto adjust by this many samples, and it will just buffer the actual program, and it'll like automatically route it, send this out earlier, and make it back up. Pro Tools, I use Pro Tools Studio, and they have
the latest one.
Yeah, the latest one.
Yeah.
And they have a latency compensation feature that's built in. For whatever reason, with my interface or with my whatever the hell, it overcompensates.
Yeah.
So when
you did tell me about this. I remember seeing that. Yeah.
So instead of delaying it, it actually overcompensates on the computer side and moves audio forward. So in order to make it work, I have to load a delay and delay it that amount so that it fights the overcompensation.
Yeah.
Because there's no way for me to just turn off the overcompensation. Every like tutorial I looked up online, it was like, oh yeah, just measure, like print it in and measure how much the delay is and just use this and it'll auto fix it. It's like I'm having the opposite problem.
Dude, that's such a fucking pain in the ass.
And I don't know how to fix it.
I don't know why that would be either.
I don't know either. It overcompensates in the computer.
It's very strange. Yeah. And you get into these little hiccups every now and again, and then it's like you're trying to reverse engineer the problem, right? And then you're trying to like optimize the computer to fix the issue, and like it might not even be tied to the computer at that point. So this is where it gets kind of like tricky, right? Because you're running an Oasis ADAT machine. How old do you think?
Well, but it's connected through ADAT through my interface.
So, okay.
And even when
you have the Cranborn interface.
I have the Cranborn R8.
Right. Yeah.
So even when I just go through a 500 series channel on my Cranborn, I don't even mess with the Oasis ADAT. It still does that overcompensation.
Gotcha.
So
yeah, latency is a fucking pain in the ass.
It is.
Seriously. It's a pain in the ass to measure too. I hate measuring latency. Like it's one of my least favorite experiments ever. I'll do null experiments all day. I think that shit's fun as fuck. I hate measuring latency.
No.
It's just not, it's not fun. And like I said, a couple different things that kind of lead to that latency issue is like your connectivity. Like, how are you connecting interfaces to your computer? How many are you connecting to your computer? Because if you're using a hub, then that slows it down like into one USB port, because then you're getting throttled. So like, for example, the Apollo. I got the Apollo mainly based on the lack of latency that they have, right? Because it's almost instantaneous. And like, I was having a lot of trouble with people hearing latency with my Claret, and I was running a Thunderbolt converter, and like, some people might be like, hey, like, that doesn't really do anything. Like, I kind of ran into the experience that it did, and people could hear themselves and would know, and it wouldn't just be as easy as, hey, take off. Yeah, it wouldn't be as easy as, hey, take off one cup of the headphone. It would just be too much for some people. So I was like, I got to fix that. That's an issue. You know, I got to optimize this, and I got that, and haven't had any latency issues since, which has been awesome. Now, opposed to like some kind of old hardware like my Claret is, I have one of the original Clarets that came out. You know, you're running on a little bit older of a protocol into your computer, which can kind of throttle some things just inherently, just because the connection isn't as stable as it would be if everything was succinct and synchronized, right? So that's like another big point where it's like, latency is one of the toughest things to solve, because a lot of the time it almost feels like you have to go into your pockets to do it. And that sucks. That sucks really bad. But so kind of leading back to the plugin talk, the latency that we're kind of talking about incurring through there kind of deals with processing power, right? And what types of plugins you're using. So if you're using a convolution reverb that loads an IR profile every single time and keeps it instantiated, instantiated, whatever.
It sounds right enough to me.
You will incur that extra processing power, right? So now we're talking about almost internal latency versus external latency. I'm not talking about interfaces anymore. We're in the computer now. We're back to the computer.
Even within it, it's like, oh, it's just all within the computer. No, like certain plugins take, because of how much processing power they take, as you're saying, they do incur different deals of latency. And that's where latency compensation comes into play. Like, it is a fantastic feature that all these DAWs have nowadays. Because, oh, this plugin causes this much latency. This plugin causes that much latency. It can make it so that it's still all time aligned, and when you're mixing and working, no matter how big or small of a rig you have, it'll work out just fine.
Absolutely.
But it is taxing.
Yes, it is. And that means you need to have more CPU power to be able to run the low latency compensation, right? So this starts kind of taking us into CPU power, RAM, things of that nature. Now, for my personal setup right now, I use 64 gigs of RAM. The reason why I use 64 gigs of RAM is because I had some weird number before. I'm not even joking. I did this because it was a weird number. I had like 42 gigs of RAM, right? I don't even know how I got the 42.
That's an odd number.
It was weird. It was 24? Really weird.
No?
Something strange.
That's weird.
And I was like, you know what? I don't know, because like there's issues out there where your RAM can actually throttle your computer if you're not using the correct RAM, right? So I was like, you know what? I'm going to take the leap up to 64. I don't need the 64. I really don't.
No.
But I want to even this out. I want to get it to a number that is normal and the computer might like, right? And so I did that. Totally overkill. I never clock out my RAM usage on Pro Tools almost ever, unless it's like 200 tracks and you're like cooking at that point, right? But very rarely do I get to that point. Now for video, that's a different story because I have a bad graphics card in mine. But do you need the 64? No, you really don't need 64 gigs of RAM.
Nope.
You really don't.
Proof is here. Hello.
You really don't even almost need 32.
I have 16 in mine.
And it works just fine?
It does.
You do it professionally.
It does.
And you get the job done.
I do. But so I do need to update. I do need to upgrade.
And we were kind of talking about that beforehand, you know. You could get away with 24 gigs. You could get away with 16 these days. Anything less than that, I wouldn't do. No, 24 is also a weird number, but they're starting to come out with that with the Apple ecosystem a little bit more now with the M2 chips and M4 chips and all that stuff. So whereabouts with RAM, anywhere from 16 to 32, I think is the golden range.
I think it's the sweet spot, yeah.
I think so. Anything more than that is overkill unless you're going to start going into video editing, and then I would definitely recommend it. Or some kind of programming if you wanted to get into that range too. Go for 64, but you really don't need 64. And like, honestly, that's a very high diminishing marginal return at that point because you're not really going to reach the power of a 64 gig RAM computer. You're just not going to. You're not going to tax it that much. So you might as well save some money in the long run.
Might as well
get some 16, get a 16, get 32. Just be done with it. Just be done with it.
For sure.
I really like that talk because that one speaks to me a lot because I always thought it was all about RAM, and turns out that's just not the case. It's just not. So CPU.
Yeah.
CPU. That's where you might want to spend a little bit more money up front. And a lot of the times it kind of has to be done up front unless you're really savvy with upgrading your computer over the long term. And I've never upgraded a computer. You might be able to speak this a little bit more.
I've never upgraded, no.
Okay.
This was my first time.
Did you build your own PC?
I did, but I had a buddy help me who's a computer engineer.
Gotcha.
From MIT.
Well, damn. So Sean had the cream of the crop.
So he did most of the heavy lifting for me.
Well, must be nice, Sean.
It's very nice.
Shout out to him.
I was like, here's the programs I want to run. Here's the budget I have. Can you help me? And he's like, dude, yes, I love messing with computers. And
I bet that was like Candyland for him.
It was great. We went to was it like Micro
Center?
Micro Center.
Yeah, was that out in Madison Heights?
Yep. Went to Micro Center, just walked around, like grab this. I'm like, okay.
That's killer, dude. That's killer.
Yep.
And then he helped you put it all together and stuff, thermal paste, all that good stuff.
Together, yep.
Yeah. Because it gets a little tough, you know.
It can be.
It's a little intimidating if you're unfamiliar
if you've never done before,
with the land. Yeah.
There's thousands of fantastic
plenty
information out there. Yeah.
Plenty. And like, honestly, you could probably find somebody around you too that has built one or knows somebody that knows how to build one too. So plenty of resources out there. But with the CPU, you might want to spend a little bit more on that because that is really like, that's the kind of the brain of the computer at that point, right? Aside from the motherboard, obviously.
Yeah.
That is truly like where a lot of the processing will incur right there. You know, so anything above 2 gigahertz, in my opinion, is good. The cores these days can range. I think I have like 20 cores in my computer or something.
Really?
Dude, I fucking spec
Is yours still Intel?
Yeah, mine's still Intel.
I don't think Intel went to that high, did they?
It's pretty high.
I
would have to look.
I know historically, like with Intel versus AMD, Intel had less cores but more powerful cores, and AMD had more cores.
It might be like an 18.
And it wasn't until like 2016, 2018 when like the communication between the cores and AMD just skyrocketed, and then that's why AMD is now the better one.
Gotcha. I would have to double check, but there's a lot of cores in this guy. Like, trying to remember because I always get screwed up with the i9 versus the i7, which by the way, those are just generations. It doesn't mean something's actually new or better, right? Or not new, excuse me. It doesn't mean it's actually better. So an i7 versus an i9 doesn't necessarily indicate a better performance. Did you know that?
I thought it did.
No, it's just generation. It's all a naming convention.
Well, because with AMD, like the Ryzen 5, 6, 7, 9.
Because you would think.
Those do make a difference. But
yeah, I've read a lot that is not the case with Intel. So it's pretty interesting.
This is Brandon's episode. He dives much more into this than I do.
And maybe somebody can correct me if I'm incorrect about that.
But let us know. Tell us how wrong we are in the comments.
Because a lot of the time, when the research that I've done,
it
doesn't necessarily indicate better performance over another. It's just a generational thing.
Yeah. Well, I do know like an i5 in a desktop versus an i5 in a laptop have very drastically different performance.
Very much so. Yeah.
Scores.
Yeah. But, and maybe what we'll do, for shits and giggles, we'll get our computer specs and post them somewhere if we want to, you know, if you want to see what we're running, right? So, but yeah, so definitely spend, I think, a decent amount on your CPU though. I think that's a good place to put your money into this. And then on top of that, integrated graphics card versus just a graphics card. I would always recommend doing a dedicated graphics card, not an integrated one, just so that way you free up extra VRAM on your end of things, so your computer's not working as hard and using the dedicated RAM that you have to also process graphics, right? So take the workload off the computer. And that's what we're trying to do a lot of the time. Everything's going to major in their majors along the way at this point, because the next thing that we're going to kind of get into too, I'm kind of done with the like what to put in your PC at this point.
Yeah,
do you feel confident with that too?
Nope.
No, I mean, do you feel confident we've reached that point though?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So now it kind of leads us to what can we do externally now outside of the computer to help run sessions efficiently?
Get a Samsung T7 Shield.
And that was this week's podcast. No, I'm serious. Because like that is like golden.
They're both of our favorite external hard drives. They're SSDs, they're durable.
Go back to the computer real quick.
SSD versus HDD.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that. Get an SSD.
Get an SSD.
Next.
Okay, moving on.
No, seriously, get an internal SSD.
Yeah.
And then if you have another bay or another port that you can use, then get maybe another like an actual hard drive disk in there.
Yep.
I like backing up the hard drive disks personally, and then running everything off an SSD. So you have the speed and real time, and then you have backups on the hard drive.
Yeah,
so
cheaper but higher amounts of storage for the price.
Exactly.
So yeah, if you're looking at for backup disks, you can go hard drive disks all the time.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, now we got that. Back to the T7.
Yep.
We run all of our sessions off T7s.
They're our favorite.
They are so fast. They are so fast, and this helps free up the read and write space and kind of divvies it up with the computer too. So your computer's handling all the reading of the processing plugins, right? Of everything that's going on. It's reading off the external drive, but it's writing to the drive. It's not writing to the computer. So it's not like taking both tasks and having to do both at the same time. It's kind of splitting that up.
Yeah.
And I love that so much because not only do you save space on your computer, but it runs a little bit more efficiently too. Because these drives are just so fucking fast. You can run 4K video off of these like in real time and it would do great.
It's crazy now.
It's nuts how
we're
fast
in a
they are.
very happy, lucky age when it comes to how seamless a lot of these things can talk and get data transferred and move in with each other.
And like the best part is too, they don't cost all that much. No. Like not like back in the day when you were paying a lot of money for SSDs.
SSDs have gone down and the space has gotten bigger.
$110 for one of those T7s, dude, for 1 terabyte. That's pretty fucking good. That's
You're going to be doing a
good.
lot of songs and a lot of work to fill up 1 terabyte.
Yep.
Especially if it's a dedicated external drive where you're again, you're not running programs off of it. You don't have your plugins all saved to it. It is purely separated for your projects. It's going to take a long time to fill that up.
Absolutely. Now, if you're running videos and stuff, of course, you're going to fill that up way quicker. So I always want to get that out there with the video people.
Yeah.
Because yes, we understand that video will automatically incur more storage. That's just the way that it works. But for us audio guys, man, I mean, I've had, of course, big sessions, 20 gigs, but that's a fucking ginormous session, dude.
With so many takes.
That's huge.
Oh yeah.
Compared to what video guys do, like.
So for a little bit of sneak peek behind the curtains, the only video that I do is this podcast.
Same.
A couple small things here and there, but
at the moment, this is
it.
Yeah.
And
hopefully I start doing those studio videos again.
You should. They look out really cool, dude.
I like those.
But yeah, I only do video for this, and we put it on a T7 Shield. And it's a 2 terabyte one that I got specifically for this. I bought it at the same time as at the beginning of the year as I bought a 1 terabyte T7 for my studio for all the music stuff. Because I do a lot of remote stuff. I worked with, at least 100 to 150 clients this year at this point. So many different songs, so many different sessions, a lot of audio. I'm about halfway to 2/3 full on my 1 terabyte.
Yeah.
And I am like 85% full on my 2 terabyte.
Damn, that's crazy.
And that's like 100, 150 clients.
That's really good.
Versus one podcast.
Yeah, totally.
That's insane, the difference.
That's huge. That's huge. And I will say with these T7s too, and I know we're talking about the T7s a lot.
Not sponsored.
If we're not sponsored yet,
I'd love to be.
Yes, I would too. Please, Samsung. That would be killer.
I mean, we're in audio. You bought out JBL and Harman and all that, so come on.
Yeah, dude. Fuck. Bring the politics into this, Sean.
Is it politics? Oh, it's just business. Anyways,
go
on.
I just wanted to call it politics. The SSDs that we're talking about, the T7s, when they fill up too, they oftentimes, I feel, they often don't throttle the speed either. So like it's consistent up until you fill it up, which is great. Now with the original T7s without the shield, they did throttle the speeds.
Yes.
Hardcore.
Yes. They
hated that.
Yep.
Oh my God. Yep. I would not recommend those.
That's what I used to
Should I go get some? Should I show the camera?
I mean, this is mostly an audio podcast, but I mean, we can,
Yeah, we'll go get some. This is the first time we've gotten up.
At least at the same time. So here we have the Samsung T7 Shield. It's got a little bit of if you look at it closely, you can see there's a little bit of a rubber coating around it that prevents it from getting damaged if it drops.
T7? See, we're not joking.
Yeah, so that's the
T7
new one.
Shield. Beauty.
Yep.
Here's the old one. Ready for this?
Also, they're color coded too. That's nice.
They are.
I've got this tan one for video. I got black for audio, and then
Nice.
I switch between black and blue every other year for my studio work.
Oh, do
so
you? Nice,
I separate them by year, so that way I have a backlog and all that. Yeah, those things.
Oh my god,
man.
Get that out. Sorry, we're loading.
We are not optimized like your computer should be.
Right. These are the original ones.
Oh, you got a label maker label on it? Man, yours looks so much
do.
nicer.
Oh, thanks, dude.
I just put painter's tape around it and drew in Sharpie.
I used
2013.
I used the label maker on this one. So this is the original T7 without the shield. I don't recommend these guys as much as I would with these guys. I mean, these guys will still do a great job, but only to a certain extent. They will start the throttle. Even when you do wipe these, I've noticed too, I did a test. When I wiped one, I tested the speed again, and it did not get the original speeds back.
Really?
So I don't know what's going on with that. I don't know if it's like a software thing that they needed to do. But even when I try to bring up the software for this, it doesn't even register. So which is kind of weird.
Planned obsolescence.
T7 shield. Beauty. Love this thing. I would grab the T9 because they came out the T9. I got it. Remember when I bought the T9? That's what I'm using right now.
Yeah.
I would grab that, but we're using it as the hard drive right now.
Can't do that.
Can't do that. But the T9s are really nice as well. Is there a massive difference between the T7 and T9?
Hell no.
Probably not. But I had to because
the number got bigger.
Yeah, exactly. So while I just said i5, i7, i9 doesn't matter as much,
technology.
I just kind of dispelled that. If you can find a T5,
I have
heard really great things about the T5s.
I have them.
Do you?
That before moving on to these, I bought T5s.
Okay. Did you like those?
Yeah.
Yeah. I even heard like today. They're great. They're great. So
no, I have no issues with them.
Better than I would say the T7, the first iteration of the T7 though.
Yeah.
Better than those. So
shield.
With all that being said, run your sessions off of external hard drives.
Yes.
Please.
This long-winded extra tangent that we went
That was one of the things that took like almost my setup for the computer to the next level. Honestly, I hate using the word game changer, but it's almost a game changer.
It changed the game.
It did.
That makes it a game changer.
It did.
Yeah.
And I couldn't imagine running sessions on my computer anymore.
No.
Ever. I don't think I've ran a session on my computer in so it's got to be at least 8 years now.
I haven't since 2016.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
It's a long time. It's almost 10 years.
Close to 9, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right,
so, yeah, definitely, barring all else out of here, run your sessions off an external hard drive.
Yes.
And so now we kind of get to the next part of this as a disclaimer. These do fail. And they will fail eventually. It's just time. Time just happens, and that's what happens to computer parts, electrical parts, everything. That's what happens. Things fail. So
what's the Ben Franklin quote? The two consistencies in this world is death and taxes.
Yep.
Yeah, these things die too.
Yep, they do. And
so don't test out the rugged protection.
Yes. I've dropped one of these one time and it did just fine.
Yeah, me too.
I wouldn't be throwing it across the room for fun. I wouldn't be tossing it to Sean. What if he's on the couch? Like, hey, Sean, I'm handing that to him. They do fail though. So with all that being said, I've seen things where SSDs are a little bit harder to recover data than hard drives are.
Really?
Not sure if that's true.
I don't know.
Not sure if that's true. I don't want to test that. I really
Nor do
don't.
I. You let us know if you've had to test that.
Yes, so please let us know. But with all that being said, is you're going to need a backup drive. And you're going to need a backup drive of your computer as well. I don't have one on my computer.
Nor do
Which is really bad. But I have backup drives of everything that I work on. So I have backup drives of my hard drives, right? You know a little bit better about backups than I do. Because, with the RAIDs.
Oh,
you use
yeah.
RAID, and do you use NAS?
I do not. I just use RAID.
Okay. Personally, what I do, I'm just going to get quick and dirty. I have SATA drives. I have 3.5-inch SATA drives that I put into a SATA drive reader. I turn it on at the end of the day. I upload everything I did. I turn it off. That's my backup. That's my physical backup. So I back everything up from these drives every single day. Whatever I bring on them goes on there. I will also back up some of my downloads folder too. When I start clearing out stuff, just in case I need anything from there. On top of that, I also use Backblaze. Maybe we'll leave a link in the description.
You send me a link and I still have to do it.
A free month each.
I still have to do it. I'll give you a free month. Give me some time.
Thanks, dude. Which it constantly backs up my computer and my hard drives, which is great. So those are my two backups. And then I also host it on here. So I have 3 places. That's the rule. You have to have it in 3 places.
2 physical, 1 on-site, 1 off-site, which is something that we both kind of fail at a little bit.
A little bit. A little bit.
And you have to let me know what you use for like your save drive and your backup.
Yeah, I can do that for sure.
Like,
yep.
It's hard to find information on like how to efficiently do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and then it can get super expensive with the NAS setups, you know, just having a network to do that. And then you're talking about also power, you know, electricity usage too, because you're often running those overnight.
Yep.
And
that's the thing, like, because a lot of times it's like, it still has to comb, even if you're only making one change in one session, it has to comb through everything to make sure there are no differences.
Exactly.
So it only uploads the one thing.
Yeah.
And that's the stuff, like, I always have a hard time finding programs that easily do that.
Yeah. The one thing that I love about Apple and the way that they handle it is like whenever I copy something over, so everything that says today that I opened, I will copy back over to my backup drive. And when it asks me, it says, hey, we noticed that these are the same, but there's some different stuff in here. Do you want us to merge these 2 together? So not only does it save the original copy that I had on the backup, but it also takes the newest copies and puts them in there with it. So I know that I'm up to date and backed up with every single thing that I do up to that moment. I love the way that it handles that. And then if it didn't do that, this would be significantly more complicated for me.
And that's the problem I run into. Yeah, it doesn't automatically do that on Windows,
it's a little wonky with how some of these things work. So you're going to have to find the best strategy that works for you. And there's so many different strategies out there. And honestly, people that are way smarter than me that come up with these things, that's their job to come up with these things and work on these things. So I highly recommend you go out and figure that out. But it's really important to make sure that you're backing up your music at all times, because it would suck to lose the song of your life that you love and cherish because somebody spilled something on something, somebody hit the hard drive off the counter, or it just flat out fails.
Yeah.
It happens.
Well, not even just that. If you would come up with a lick and it's on like our bass line or something on a song, and then 2 years later someone steals that.
Yep. Oh, yeah, great
and your
point.
hard drive is down, there's like natural copyright's a thing, which we're going to be tackling in a future episode.
We will be.
But if there's no like proof of, no, this was made on this date and this time frame, the less information you have that showcases the creation of it, the harder it is to prove that it was originally your intellectual property. So for legal purposes too, it pays to have backups of like when your stuff was created, the whole process of how you created it, just to kind of emphasize the ownership of the song and of the file.
Absolutely. So please make sure you're backed up. That's it. That's what I'm going to leave it with. Just make sure you're backed up.
Just back it up.
Yep. Just every day when you're working, it doesn't take anything to just drag something over and then call it a day. So
I'm trying to think of, is there like a little Wayne song that's about, is this like back it up?
Oh yeah, maybe.
Whatever. I was trying to make a reference. I have failed.
No, it's okay. It's okay. That's the Music Maker's Cookbook right there.
Yeah, just all failures.
No.
That's what it is. The Music Maker's Cookbook.
Well, you know, out of all the failures today, I hope this one doesn't happen to you. Look at that.
Way to conclude it.
I tried to.
There we go.
Was that good?
You've been the king of transitions today.
Oh,
I appreciate that. I mean, you got the question at the beginning, got all the transitions, and he talked like 90% of the time.
We're here today.
This man's on fire.
I'm here today.
Put him out. He's in pain.
Don't put me out. I have a whole day to get through.
Oh man.
Oh, that's funny.
Anything else you want to say about optimizing?
I think that's about it. I think we covered everything that I usually count as touch points.
Yeah.
Kind of low-hanging fruit, you know. Anything else, I mean, you can get very specific and very
this
detailed
podcast is not
and
the
that's
format
not
for that,
really what we're kind of going for here.
This is
we're
just for you to be aware of it.
Exactly, and for us to just go and make music the fastest and best way we can, and the most efficient way.
Any limitation you can take down that is between you and making the song that's in your head exist in the real world, we want to shorten that gap as much as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because it's already hard enough to get from brain to outside of your head, right? And to get it to sound back correctly, right?
Yeah.
So having an extra obstacle there will only make that even harder. So might as well just do it right.
Yeah. So if this sounds like a lot, optimization for the computer and all the programs and hardware that you're going to need to make it work, but you still want that quick connection between what you will have in your head to that final project. A great thing you can do is go to a music studio. One specifically that's great is Brandon Studio.
What a transition, dude.
Recording.
Back to you, man. You've extinguished me, but let yourself on fire. Anyways. You can go
On fire!
You can go to studio222recording.com to find out more about what I do. I work on audio and music alike, recording, mixing, mastering, things like that. You can fill out an inquiry request form on my website, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible and talk to you about the project. And you can find me on social media, but I'm not going to tell you where. Sean, where can we find more information about your great music studio that people can get from their brain into the world?
Yeah, likewise, I have a recording studio called SWS Recordings. You can check out the website there, fill out a form also. On top of mixing and mastering folk, rock, acoustic, and blues music, either remotely or in person at the studio if you want to do some recording, I do one-on-one artist development coaching, which is basically this podcast, but more specified and laid out in a roadmap for you and your career to help accelerate making a living in the music industry.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're curious for any of that, you can hit me up there.
Sean's great.
Appreciate it. On top of that, if you want to talk to both of us or just kind of follow up what's happening with Music Makers Cookbook, you can follow us at Music Makers Cookbook on any social media platform. We post the full video podcast on YouTube if you want to go see our faces while we're talking, and also look at Brandon's really awesome studio that he's got behind him. Yeah, check out the new monitors. They're going to stay here for a long time, so be sure to make a comment on that. But yeah, definitely check us out there. Leave a comment, talk to us. We have some shorts on TikToks. We've been actually editing them a lot more interestingly these past couple of weeks.
Yeah, they've been looking great.
Yeah. So if you want to like kind of get some sneak peeks on the most important, not some sneak peeks, but like just look at the really important stuff or the entertaining stuff, you can definitely follow us on TikTok for some short form goodness.
Absolutely. Yeah. Probably by the time this comes out, the monitors will be gone.
What?
So sad. So sad.
I'm glad we captured it forever.
I'll look back
73.
on this episode with fond memories.
Mm-hmm. I just imagine you like a year and a half from now with like a single tear down your eye, just like on the screen. The ones that let walk away. No, there's reasons why they're leaving. But with that being said, thank you for getting us to this point of the podcast. Thank you for dealing with us, and hopefully it was helpful for you. Let us know any future episodes you'd like us to talk about in the future. We'd love to hear it.
Absolutely.
We got a list of things we want to talk about coming up, but we always prioritize things that are immediately affecting the listeners of this podcast. We did one about how to find other musicians online or in person a couple episodes ago, and that one turned out really well.
Yeah.
So if there's anything you want us to dive into and talk about, let us know there. With that all being said, from our kitchen to yours,
Bon appetit.